I'm all right for now.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of movement in the market. And I think this is one of the reasons why we're having sessions like that, is just to sort of excite people that may be in a slightly different line of business to come and have a look at all the new stuff that is coming out in business applications and in Dynamics 365. Just so you know, oh, this is the cool stuff. Like even if they're doing Salesforce, now they can use Viva Sales and then connect to Salesforce from Outlook. So yeah, there's definitely lots of opportunities in there where we can encourage other people to come and join us. And here's Marianne. Hey, Marianne, how's it going? Are you? Go ahead, Eliza.
Yeah, I wasn't sure about Viva Sales because I haven't been paying attention. And when I saw it in Ignite, I was like, this just looks like our CRM Outlook client or CRM.
Don't say that.
For years.
This session is recorded.
It does. Don't deny it. It really is. When they walk through the features, I was
it's $50 a month.
This for years.
$50 a month.
It's what, Neil?
$50 a month. Remember, you used to get it for free. No, it's $50 a month.
Oh, okay.
Remember, you used to get a whole CRM suite for $45 a month.
Yeah, it did.
Is that showing your age, Neil?
Leon told me. I couldn't remember.
So what was sort of the general feel about Ignite this year? So I know, I'm one of those crazy guys that actually woke up at 3 a.m. the night before just to go into the the MVP call, just so that they can give us the insight of all the things that are coming out. I was like, oh my God, and I geeked out and all of that. And then the next morning, 4 a.m., went and watched Satya Nadella's keynotes. And it's like taking screenshots and blogging and putting things out there, amplifying messages and so on. And in a way, like I felt like and maybe it's because it's not focused too much on business applications, Dynamics and Power Platform, but they skimmed on it. But it had a fair amount of representation in there, and I was really happy with sort of what they covered and some of the new things that are coming out. What are you guys feeling about it?
I think there's more each year, Rami. I think it's not it's an IT pro conference, right? That's the target audience. And it's great to see more business applications content sneaking in there every year. I think it's, I wouldn't expect us to take main stage. So it's good.
Yeah. And in a way we did. Like, I think Satya was really excited about some of the Power Automate AI capabilities that they've been introducing. And it's also the theme that Microsoft has been following for quite a while. So that's really good to see that we are featuring in that keynote. It's not like, oh yeah, there's that thing, and then go and have a look at it later. But it's interesting. You said it is sort of a dev-orientated type of conference, maybe not as much as build. But one thing that I did feel was missing was like deep dives and depth of this is how we're going to do it, and go and follow that up, because Satya talked about it. I'm like, awesome. I'm definitely going to go and watch like Sanghia's session on Power Pages. I'm going to watch Steve Siciliano's session on Power Automate, and whatever other sessions that they will deep dive into it. But all of them were like half an hour, 50 minutes or so, and then you get there and it's like, oh yeah, look at that, and then they go and look at that, and then look at that, and we're out of time. Thank you very much, and everybody's gone. So I really felt like there wasn't enough in-depth sessions. Did you guys feel that as well?
Well, I don't know. This is me just speculating. Maybe they did their research and look into the insights and see that people dropped off after 30 minutes. I don't know if it's me just.
And my perspective is probably they are looking at kind of selling it to, I mean, not only focusing on the tech like us as well, so focusing on general community as well, like the customers as well, looking into customer stories. I think they bring in customer stories and then linking into products and stuff like that. So it's like more focusing on bringing in new audience as well. If you are new, and then you can still follow it.
Absolutely, 100%. And I was actually, this is in a way one of my sort of comments that I've noticed, and I could feel it. I'm just going to put the link in there. So this is the session from Sanghia where she talked about the latest Power Pages announcements that now it's in GA. They also talked a little bit about the licensing changes that they've done in there. And I was hoping to see more, like, show us that, the Designer Studio, how can you use it and all of that. And it was really like a more of a marketing, this is at a high level what it's doing. And half of it, as you said, Kasun, was, and look at who else is using it and look at how successful we are,
Exactly.
right? And I was expecting something a little bit more hands-on.
Hands-on, yeah.
Yeah. But so what about Power Pages? I think, AK, you are the Power Pages expert. What are your thoughts about what they've announced in there?
Me, Power Pages expert. No, so but this Ignite, I was just focusing on other content, not really on the Power Platform. And you already know my Kurami.
What is that?
The sure step to get the IT job.
Oh, right. That's right.
Yeah. So what I looking at the keynote and what's happening around here, like in 2000s, probably, you will get the IT job when you know how to write a code. And 2020, you can get an IT job when you know how to use no-code, local platform. And in 2030, probably you just need to write a comment. This is what I see, because this is what's happening with the AI and, generating the code. And this is there in the demo, like a GitHub Copilot. You write a comment and code is generated, and you just need to fill out a few things. So probably, in 2030, you just need to write a comment. That is what I feel.
That was absolutely really cool to see that, where with ideas, GPT-3 and all of this AI powered goodness, it's really turning into natural language, explaining what you want to do, and then just putting this stuff and then getting all of that generated. We saw it in the GitHub. We also saw it in Power Automate, how you can actually. Anybody would like to demonstrate that capability? I can quickly do it if that's okay with you guys, unless someone else wants to steal the thunder.
Man, I go for it.
Go for it. All right. Oh man, why do I not close my tabs before I start? All right. So here we go. I'm going to share my screen. One. All right, so I am in the make.powerautomate.com, and then I went to the create section in here. And one new addition that you will see is in here, describe it, AI builds it. This is a really cool new feature. So basically you click on it and just in words, you describe what you want it to do. So typically we would, let's say, send an email on, and it gives you a few samples on things that you can do, but even if it's not there, it will still try to understand what you're trying to do and then try to sort of build the Power Automate for you. So send an email on create of a record, for example. And I just hit enter and it thinks about it and it goes and tries to understand. And here you go. When an item is created, now, although it did select SharePoint by default, it's going to send an email and I can click on that and it does it for me. So create of a record in Dataverse. Let's see if it's going to be smart enough to actually, here you go. It actually did understand that. So it picks the right connectors for you, and then it picks the right actions that it's going to do, and it gives you the scaffold of what you're trying to achieve. And this is available in preview. So if you're interested in it, just give it a spin, go and try it and see if that works for you. And as usual, Microsoft is always keen to get a little bit of feedback on how this is working. And they actually do look at the details. So in Power Apps, for example, there is the ideas section, I believe it's called, where you can sort of type in some text and then it will generate some code for you. And there's a place where you can provide feedback I know for a fact that the product team actually goes through every single feedback that is submitted in there. So they've got a process once a week where they do a triage, they try to understand what people are asking for, and then they go and add it to the backlog if they see that it's an important feature that they would like to add. So do provide your feedback for Microsoft, and they'll be keen to actually progress on that.
I'm going to add one more comment to that. I don't know if anyone paid attention to the on-demand session where Charles was talking with Garina, and when Lydia showcased like what's new, what's coming in the release wave to the Power Platform, and when she was doing the demo, I noticed that when she was going through the you say AI builds it option, the legacy Dataverse connector was showing on the screen. I was like,
yeah. I saw it in the screenshot.
I was just like,
Oh, that's a great connector.
I believe this is the session. So it's the what's new in wave 2. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Talking
Put
about
the
that,
link in there.
I also noticed, I think there's the Charles and Donovan.
Yeah.
And the session as well, like custom connectors like APIs. That's just take all the authentications. What is it? Should be on the demo like that.
Yeah.
No authentication, everything open. It's some small little things that can make some difference.
Yeah.
What's everybody's general feeling about Power Automate's connectors strategy? Microsoft seems to have stopped building connectors. There's no plan to build connectors for third-party applications, and a lot of my devs tell me that the process of shipping connectors from dev into production with all the connection references hullabaloo is still painfully messy and very error-prone. Are they ever going to get it right, do you think?
Well, one of the things that I did see in Evan Liu's session was they did give us a teaser of being able to manage pipelines from within the Maker portal. So I don't know. I'd be keen to see how that works, where it goes from, because they have like a screen and it shows dev to, let's say, test, and then test to production, and allows you to select your apps and flows. But I didn't see anything in regards to Dataverse, so maybe they are listening, because he was saying that the feedback that they've received was that it's quite troublesome to understand how to use Azure DevOps if you're not a pro code developer. So they, again, going with a theme, they want to make it accessible for everyone. It'll be interesting to see how that pans out. Yeah.
The story is definitely not 100% clean in terms of deployments. I mean, I remember back in the days, in the CRM days, where you used to create a workflow, right? Just an out-of-the-box conventional legacy workflow. You would put it into your
creating
solution.
Workflow, Rami.
There's people on this call that actually, are in my team. Don't give them bad ideas, all right? But yeah, we do the same. But yeah, you put it in a solution, you just move that solution from one environment to the other, and it works. You don't have to worry about, connectors and connection references and making sure this works and this doesn't work. Having said that, it was simpler days. So it was limited in what it could do. It only had one connection to worry about and so on. Now things have evolved, and, they talk about multi-environments and so on, which is for the greater good. But yeah, 100%, Neil, I think it's still a bit messy and still a bit difficult to manage when we're doing deployments, and hopefully that story is going to get better. Talking about that, there is the managed environments. So this is something new that is coming up. And sort of, I've seen a lot of talks about it. So I'm just going to paste a little image in the chat. This shows what managed environments can do today and what do they have planned for the future. And I'm glad that this is public knowledge, that it was announced at Ignite. And there's actually quite a lot of really cool sort of insights about the capabilities. And one of them is sort of the pipelines that you were talking about, Eliza. The things that they're considering of doing is just saying that I've got an environment and I've got, this lot of solutions in my, stash basically, and I would like to distribute them into those environments. So it's really good to see that this is something that they're working on. And mainly, I think, Neil, the idea behind it is to simplify the way they're doing deployments and to streamline it as much as possible. But yeah, so as they currently stand, managed environments have things like, specific data policies that they can manage, sharing limits on what you can do. A lot of it, I think, came from concerns about licensing. So, you'll be one little implementation part of a big tenancy that hogs all of the resources. So trying to limit how much it can do and so on. So anybody sort of is working on the public preview of managed environments? No. Yeah, it's some definitely more on the I would say on the administration side of things rather than the implementation side of things. Yeah. So we were talking about Power Automate. So one of the big fuss that they made is using Power Automate in Excel. Is that something that I don't know? I'm not a very big Excel fan, and I try to convince my customers to move away from Excel. But how do we see that being used in the market?
I guess it could be a replacement for VBA. I'm not sure. Excel's. Yeah, I tend to work with enterprise solutions, and Excel's sort of the arch enemy of enterprise solutions. So
exactly.
I'm not sure what they're trying there, unless they're trying to get rid of VBA, right? So sure, you could use flows to pull information in, perhaps. Yeah. Sorry, go, Eliza.
I think that's what they're aiming for. I think Leon is spot on that. There's still a lot of companies out there that gravitate towards Excel spreadsheets, and so I feel maybe it's the program managers or the product team for Power Automate, wanting to insert more automation within those workbooks that people are still dependent on, that don't want to shift from the way they've always done things. So I guess this is Microsoft's way of saying, well, okay, if they don't want to change the way they do things, let's still at least make it easier for them to have the automation immersed in the Excel experience. Again, I don't know. I'm just second guessing.
This is like when they were putting the Power Apps in front of Access, right? They were selling this as a fantastic thing that you can put a Power App and stick it and have access in the back end, when the rest of us were going, you're insane, right? Why would you keep the back end a dodge? One thing I have seen, which gives me hope, is they talk about being able to create the the virtual tables using connections, and the example they cite is pulling in an Excel spreadsheet as a virtual table. And so I'm wondering if that's their sort of approach to a stepping stone of, you have a sort of you suck it in via a virtual table, you create your model-driven app on it, and then over time you just get rid of the Excel spreadsheets. So you do this through a whole bunch, for the thousands of Excel spreadsheets that every major corporation is running on and surviving on, and then over time you just get rid of them. So I'm hoping that's.
We lost Leon.
Someone?
He's yeah. Are you back, Leon?
Hello.
Hey,
crashed Teams for a second.
I crashed Teams. Oh my goodness. Did you hear me okay, or was my rambling?
We lost you, but well, you were getting rid of all the thousands of Excel spreadsheets across the enterprise.
Yes, that's the one.
Yep. Yeah. Last time I tried to use the Excel connector, you couldn't trigger a Power Automate flow when somebody added a row to Excel. Is that still a limitation?
I'm not sure. I don't use it that often.
Oh, okay.
I don't think so, because I mean, Rami, when you were doing the whole, oh no, that was really SharePoint. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
It was a SharePoint trigger, not an Excel trigger.
Yeah. Yeah, big difference. So just having a look at your question, Neil, around sort of how managed environments may start sort of replacing some of the COE capabilities, and Lynn is on the spot there. So one thing that I've noticed is that actually talking to the people that have built the Center of Excellence, the only reason why we've got the COE is because we need to move fast because there is demand. But our ultimate goal is that the COE will be redundant because everything else is now natively built in the platform.
Right.
So we gradually see some of those capabilities being sort of lit up in the platform. And I think the COE is also like a playpen, a playground for the team to start building some of those capabilities, monitor the uptake, see how much interest there is in it. And then as they see that it's maturing and, people are like, loving it and liking it and using it a lot, then they make it native to the platform. So yeah, that's an excellent comment, actually. And
do you think they got that?
Was great.
I think that's a great strategy, but I think they arrived at that by accident. That wasn't a design. Oh, let's get Manuela to build this separate solution and see what the uptake is. Now, I think she just built it Skunkworks style, and is it Julie Strauss who runs the Power Platform Admin Center team? It's like, whoa, this is really popular. We should do something about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, and we've definitely seen over the last few years where more attention is sort of being given to the Center of Excellence, and they're making a big buzz about it. And in fact, didn't they announce that now there is like a wizard type of deployment for it? So you can just say, I want this, next, and then you install it onto your instance. So it's it's really interesting to see that it's taking front stage, and it's really interesting to see that Microsoft is transparent about it and saying that, as you said, this is skunkwork. This is just to get you going. It's a starter kit. It's not necessarily the answer to everything, and you go and do whatever you want with it. I know people in my team that have sort of contributed back to the Center of Excellence and have added some new features which Microsoft has embraced and added them part of a PR later into their source code. So it's good to see that they take feedback from the public, and the public can contribute towards that as well. So no, that's all really good news to hear. Hey, Kay.
Yep. You guys are the expert here, so I have questions.
Now we're the experts, right?
So yeah, I think on the Center of Excellence, we try to use in organizations, and the way, I realize it is more like a reactive solutions instead of the proactive, and it's heavily used those Power Automates. And the question is, is quite related to what they just talk about, those condition reference and conditions and the Power Automate deployment. And most of the enterprise organizations, they don't want to have any service account, which is a non-person account. And as of today, all the connections in the Power Automate can only be owned by a user, not like a service principal or even like a managed identity, which creates a concern around the securities and maintenance issues in the organizations. And is there any other things that you guys know, or how do you sort out this problem?
I think that's definitely a known issue, an issue that has been echoed many times with the Microsoft product team as well. And it's something that they are working on. I don't know exactly what the solution is moving forward. I don't know if anybody else on the call has any insight on whether they do have a solution for that. No, but yeah, well.
But I wanted to ask AK a question as well.
Yep.
So how come there's some companies that are reluctant to have a service account? Like, what's the thought behind that?
In terms of the securities or the best practice, there's more like a managed identity is the first priority and go by that. If we can't do that, of course, we can always go to service principal. And the thing is like, if we don't have any choice, obviously we create a service account. And the way we see the identity is, only the actual person should be should has the user account instead of we creating like the service account, and the maintaining and all this stuff become kind of like a problematic. And also like you might share this service account to someone else, and the controlling on in terms of like restricting the permissions become a lot more difficult. So And the daily usage, yeah, that's totally fine. But I think in the enterprise usage, probably that is where we see it's a little bit behind compared to something like a Logic apps, where you don't have the owner on the connection itself.
Yeah, so I think, AK, most of my enterprise customers who are trying to head towards managed identities and a more enterprise scale doing things, they're not using Power Automate.
Right.
And it's, we all have to make these design decisions. We want to do, should we do what we can in Power Automate and use Logic apps when we have to? Or should we just do everything in Logic apps because it's much easier to troubleshoot one thing rather than have your functionality split across two? It's a bit like business rules versus JavaScript when you want to do UI customization. Let's use business rules. Oh, well, we can't hide a tab. Okay, well, let's do that bit in JavaScript. Now when I've got to troubleshoot some unexpected behavior, I've got a bunch of rules to check and JavaScript to check. Oh, it'd be much easier if we just did it all in JavaScript. And
yeah,
it's those growing pains that we've all experienced, and the limitations of some of the point and click customization capabilities.
So would you guys consider Logic apps pro code, or would you consider it citizen developer?
No, it's pro code.
Pro code.
Pro
Absolutely.
code. Okay, yeah, that's interesting. So I guess this is where Fusion development comes in, right?
Right.
So you would get someone who's like has an Azure background and can do Logic apps and all of that, and then go and set them up, and then get someone from a Dynamics perspective or Power Platform perspective to do the schema and the front end and so on, and then just merge those two together. Yeah. So sounds interesting. But yeah, I mean, definitely, I hear you guys from an enterprise perspective. We always have that challenge. And yeah, the conversation about Power Automate and Logic apps has been there since day one, since, Power Automate has that overlap with Logic apps. And then sort of managed identities and service accounts and who owns connection references and all of that has always been a pain. But again, Microsoft is aware of that, and they actively try to improve on that experience moving forward. But I'm not sure exactly what they've got.
So one of the side benefits of using more Azure services, and it's great to see this has now come to pay-as-you-go licensing for Power Apps, is that you can contain the costs of Azure because it's a completely different billing engine, and you can say, okay, it runs in this resource group runs in that subscription, and that subscription gets paid for by the operations team or the finance team or the sales team or the Asia Pacific business unit. And so you can attribute costs really well. All the other Power Platform stuff is this big, massive cost bucket that nobody knows how to account for. It's like, oh, the marketing team's using all the Dataverse storage. How do we make them pay for it? Well, it's really hard.
Yeah, that's absolutely 100% correct. Like in terms of storage is a big problem, but also in terms of like allowance. Like, how many actions can I execute per day on Power Automate before things starts throttling? And then, the little kid in the block that is paying the least amount of licenses is using the most amount of executions, and then everybody else suffers from it.
Yep.
And yeah, I mean, in a way, I give that feedback to Microsoft. So if you think about it, nothing beats free. So if I have to build it using a plugin, it's free. If I have to build it using an out-of-the-box legacy workflow, it's free. So usually I hinder sort of adoption of those low-code platforms simply because there are free options available out there or licensing options that work best for my customer. And then we are actually forced to go that way. So in a way, there's been a lot of feedback around sort of licensing, and this is where the Power Pages new licensing capability came in, and I think it's really good to see that change. So like sort of on the people on the call, maybe show of hands, who is using Power Pages for like large enterprise organizations? Myself. Yeah. All right, so about half of us. So some of the usual suspects. So Jiva, yourself as well. Jiva, feel free to show your face if you're okay, if you've done your makeup today, and then you can join the conversation. Here you go. Right, nice to see you. So the two suspects that probably AK and I are sort of across is the Department of Internal Affairs and the Ministry of Business, Employment and Innovation in New Zealand, using them for visa applications and also for passport renewal and citizenship. So massive volumes, as you can imagine, and huge licensing costs. So having a look at the new licensing model definitely works for the best for our customers. So just in a nutshell, it's prepaid now, so you can decide how many logins or how many anonymous pages you're going to anticipate, you're going to see. Those are now calculated per month. So the number of authenticated users that have logged in within a month are charged as one unit, and you just count how many of them are going to be logged in. Before that, it was per 24 hours. So when someone logs in 24 hours and then they log in the next day, that's counted as two different logins. So you can imagine that people that are working on, let's say, a visa application that usually takes them a week, every day they log in, they actually are charged as one login. Whereas now it's just, if they do it within a month, then this is how they're going to be charged. So I think that works fine. And also they do have a pay-as-you-go, if I'm not mistaken, option where you basically, it's a little bit more expensive, but if you're not certain about, how many you're going to use, you just turn it into pay-as-you-go and then you start charging it that way. The other thing that they've mentioned, and it was in one of the Ask the Expert sessions, is how does it scale? Like, how do you know whether you've got enough resources behind your portal to actually cater for the amount of visitors that I've got? And they said it's basically associated with the pre-packages that you prepay for in the licensing. So if I buy, for 400 users, then it will scale for 400 users. Plus or minus a little bit more. So if you go over that, it will still cater for it. But if you're twice, three times above what you've asked for, then you might get a performance hit and all of that. So it's really good to see that they're going down that route. Any other comment? Yeah, go ahead, Ryan.
Yeah, so I've attended some PGI, so the internal product team sessions around the licensing. And so before I say anything, I want to make sure, did they talk about how anonymous users are going to be counted in the licenses?
As far as I know, not page view anymore. This anonymous user.
Okay,
right?
they said that. Okay, yes, that's okay. So that's the other big change.
Yeah.
So I can talk about that then. Yes, this is the other big change that rather than being per page hit, which is what it was before for the anonymous, it's now basically they're going to use a cookie. There'll be a cookie on the browser, and so if you go to a page multiple times, it's only one hit, even for anonymous users as well, which is good. And if you're anonymous and then log in, then you're a login user. You're an authenticated user. So it's good. So the new licensing model is good in the sense of it should be cheaper. There are some edge cases where it isn't because of the different price points, but it's still expensive. And so what kills me is I want to use Power Pages for solutions, right? So I see, I'm on pre-sales, so it's more like I see tenders and I go, oh, that's a Power Page solution. But the thing that kills it is not the functionality of the Power Pages, it's the licensing model. It's still very expensive for what it is, frankly, even though it's going to be cheaper for in the vast majority of cases with this new licensing model. For what it is, it's still bloody expensive to use a technical term. So it drives me nuts. So I don't know if there's going to be more work there if they don't see the traction. What I'm hoping is if they don't see the traction, they'll conclude Power Pages is rubbish. No, it's not Power Pages is rubbish. It's too bloody expensive. You need to cut the costs down. So hopefully they'll do that. Neil, you've got your hand up. I'll stop rambling.
Yeah, I was just going to build on that, Leon. I think it would have been good if Microsoft had said our cost modeling has shown us that the new licensing plan will reduce the cost for X% of customers today. Here's some comparisons, A, B, and C scenarios. And maybe even hinting at what you said, Leon, is here are a couple of edge cases where customers might pay more for these kind of scenarios. So watch out for those. But in 7 to 8% of customers will pay less with Power Pages than they would have paid with Power Apps portals. That would have been good if they had, go back to your point, Rami, about depth of content, if they had gone to that level. But I think even as a marketing message, when you reveal new licensing, you want to make people feel good about it, and showing that it's less expensive would have been a good idea. But instead they just said, here's the new licensing model and you have to figure it out yourself.
Yeah. I don't know about competitors on the market, like, I don't know, Salesforce, for example, and if they have a portal and how much that costs. But my understanding is that, compared to other products that do sort of the same thing as the ecosystem for the Power Platform and Dataverse, it is either comparable or slightly cheaper, but I cannot vouch on that because I don't know what the competitors offer and who we're competing against, basically.
My bigger customers haven't used Power Apps portals, but they've already had Sitecore or Adobe Experience Manager as their core content management system.
Mm-hmm.
And so they just asked me to provide Dataverse APIs, and they can request data, they can insert records, and so they're just using the Dataverse API with whatever page building technology that Sitecore or Adobe gives them. Be interesting to see if Power Pages can win some deals. I suspect it's not. It's not going to displace Sitecore or Adobe too often.
So sorry, Leon. I think this is an interesting one. So how do they manage security in situations like that?
So again, you come down to that. Which account is your Sitecore developer going to use when they call the Dataverse API? What permissions has it got? What data is it scoped to? Just the usual kind of stuff. Just as ways you manage user security.
Right. So because I think this is one of the selling points. Because in the past, back when we were, young, stupid, and naive, we built quite a lot of custom portals for Power. Back then, Dynamics 365 or Dynamics CRM even. And it was back when ADX Studio was there and you had those type of portals. But the thing that would always cost us a lot of money is to get the security model right. And this is what I really like in the redesigned sort of Power Pages and the studio that they've provided, is that everything is drag and drop and everything is where you want it to be. So for example, if you're dragging a basic form or you're doing a multi-step form or a list or something like that, right there, you've got the button that says permissions. You click on it and then you get on the side, all the different permissions that you can provide so that you can manage it. I think that this is one of the main reasons why we think, this is going to save us a lot of time moving forward. And it's such a, maybe because we've used it so many times that it becomes easy to set up. If that contact is associated with that record, then they've got visibility over it, and you can do some, cascading and some organization bit and so on. So it makes it quite flexible. I'm actually keen to hear from Jiva. So you had a bit of interest on the Power Pages content. Do you have any insight or any sort of bits to highlight in terms of how it's going to make your life easier moving forward? Sorry, we can't hear you. I don't know if you've got your mic connected. You're not on mute, but we can't hear you.
Is that?
Yep, that's better.
Oh, now you can hear me. Wrong time. Yeah. Yeah. So what I was saying is, different licensing is something that's quite interesting, right? In terms of the current customers that we have, and also for the future customers. From feature standpoint on the authentication, so apart from what you shared and the flexibility of using external authentication, so using Azure B2C kind of authentication has made things really easier and smoother, I would say, for the authenticated users and also for the anonymous users wherever required. And the recent announcement of inline editing using VS Code there in the browser. I know Neil has got some comments on that when they announced the PGR and in terms of ALM, right? But I think they made a statement that any changes would be private by default. So you got to make it public, and then you have to incorporate all the ALM changes on top of that. And that's something, definitely the way they make the user experience unique across all these Power Platform products. And now that same thing applied to portals as well. And that's what I think it's make it more flexible. Yeah.
Yeah, sounds good. So Neil, you didn't like that VS Code integration?
Well, it's great. And Jiva captured my query. It's just, does that encourage developers to develop in production, because it looked like a production change to me. That just doesn't seem like a good idea.
Yeah. Fair enough. AK?
Yeah, so regarding that change, Power Pages, I think one of the things that benefit the enterprise organization is ability to set the website into the private mode. So you don't allow them to, especially dev and prod environments. That's really a good point, because before that we've been trying to set up those IP restrictions. IP address change every time. Next day you block. You go and update your IP address. That's really painful.
That's actually a really good comment. It's a really good feature that was added. So Kasun, you mentioned that you also use Power Pages for FNO.
Yeah, for FNO as well, Rami. So there's a lot of use cases coming in as well. I think the licensing model is quite attractive now, seems like, and I think I can think of cases like some of the example like claims and stuff like that coming back to CE through portal, and then from CE to FinOps, or from FinOps directly to the Power Pages kind of scenario. So there will be a lot of use cases can come through with the Power Pages as well. So there are scenarios which will be interesting for FinOps, because you can expose data from FinOps back to Power Pages, and then let the users and the customers come back through there.
Yep. Awesome. So Kasun, you're our Dynamics 365 ERP expert. Were there any specific announcements that you were excited about at Ignite?
There are a few announcements. So I think they categorized manufacturing, inventory, and logistics and planning stuff. So under the manufacturing, I think they were looking at the sensor data intelligence and asset management kind of stuff. So they kind of like machine status of with kind of a production, like product quality, looking after your product quality, production delays and stuff like that. So sensor data intelligence, this feature is in preview at the moment. So that's quite a, I think that's why I'm quite interested with the industry metaverse and stuff like that. So these metaverse will be there will be a lot of scenarios coming up with these cases as well. So I think it's not I don't think it's probably it's a futuristic stuff. Like a lot of the things will unfold in the future with the metaverse and the digital twins and stuff like that. You can manage assets as a digital twin, and you can simulate it, and if you have any issues or if you want to do a preventive stuff, then you can create work orders, stuff like that. So there will be a lot of cases coming in. So that will be quite interesting in the future. And then the other one is the inventory and logistics. They have a lot of improvements for the warehouse management app. So there's a warehouse management app. So they have a lot of capabilities added into the warehouse management app. And I think previously we discussed about like guided stuff. So we have like guided warehouse implementation, so which used to be a lot of steps. You have to do a lot of implementation. We have a lot of setups to be done. And now you have a guided process to do it. So there have been a lot of improvements. I've seen a lot of these guided stuff coming in, so that it reduces the effort that we put it in as well. So, and I don't know whether the GTA and come back and then you can say this, okay, this is what I need, then this is what needs to be done, and then you set it up already, right? So probably a futuristic thing, but it's kind of getting reduced some of the manual steps, and even troubleshooting as well and within the finance and operations. We have separately location directors. So example, like if you want to previously you don't see all the queries intact together, but you can see now, and then you can do troubleshooting, whereas previously you had to manually check where your code is getting executed and stuff like that. Now you can do that. So there have been a lot of improvements happening in that space as well. And the other one is within the planning section. They have added new features on the planning section as well. So we had classic planning module previously. Now they have like planning optimization. So they are Microsoft is adding a lot of capabilities back into the planning optimization and planning stuff. Yeah, so a lot of stuff coming in on the finance and operations as well. Yeah,
definitely lots of recurring themes that we can see with the rest of the platform, trying to be sort of on par with FNO and so on. Interesting. You mentioned the metaverse. So you've got a session at the New Zealand Business Application Summit, which is on the 4th of November for anybody who's interested. And you're going to show us some of that capability. Can you give us a quick sneak preview of what the content will be?
Yeah, I think the few of the things I've touched upon, like the asset management stuff, and then also I think like field service. If you look at the field service and using HoloLens and stuff like that, that would be like, because the metaverse is pretty much you can have like either using a VR or AR kind of a technologies and stuff like that. So these capabilities will be coming up. I believe like example like learning and medical and field service kind of stuff will be very exciting in the future. So there can be a lot of things can be done. I think I think the technology has to be probably improved, and also the device cost has to be probably get lower as well in terms of like HoloLens and also all those devices like Quest and stuff like that, so that it can be adapted pretty fast because of the low cost and all those stuff like that. So I think things are coming up. I think the technology is improving and all those things are happening, and then you will see a lot of capabilities added in, even like Power Apps as well. You have like virtual reality, so mixed reality stuff like that, mixed reality stuff that you can do. So that can be actually, in a way, it's a metaverse kind of, capabilities coming up. But there will be a lot of business applications, D365, finance and operations with the IoT. Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely see a lot of AR stuff sort of coming up quite often. I was buying a coffee machine the other day, and I realized that through the website I can use AR to see what it's going to look like on my kitchen bench. So it's really amazing, really awesome stuff. And it's also interesting that you mentioned digital twin. So I've got a relative that works as a steel engineer. So he looks after the bridges across New Zealand and Australia, like the Sydney Harbour Bridge and the Auckland Harbour Bridge and so on. And they are talking about creating those digital twins, and they want to do it sort of step by step. I'm like, I was listening to Satya's keynote. I'm like, digital twins? Oh, I need to go and tell my cousin about that. So yeah, I'm really keen to actually see what you've got to talk about in your session, sort of at the summit, just to get an idea of what is the art of possible and how it can be applied across multiple industries. Definitely something I'm interested in.
Yeah,
cool. So switching gears a little bit, co-authoring of applications. That's something that definitely I've been sort of waiting for quite a long time. We've seen different announcements throughout the years, internal and public as well. And now it's finally sort of making the front stage. I'm going to pick on Lynn to actually give us a bit of sort of thought about that. So I think this is now, if I'm not mistaken, this is now available in model-driven apps, sort of co-authoring, where multiple people can be working on the same app. You can see who's there, sort of a la Office 365, and you can also interact with them and add comments, just like you're adding comments on a Word document. Is that correct, Len?
Yes, that's basically pretty much it at the moment. That's just for us to visualize like who is currently trying to update the same app, so that we are not going to override each other changes. And at the same time, you can make a comment and interact with each other to collaborate each other. But what I would like to see more in the future is like on the forms level and the views level. That is where we usually tend to override each other contexts, each other changes. And so that will be my next wish list. And even if it's possible, like just like real-time changes, all these updated changes made by another users show up immediately on the page. That will be really awesome. But I think that will be a really long future time.
Yeah. So what you're thinking about is something similar to, let's say you're doing a Word document update or a PowerPoint update, and you can see who's in that specific page, which paragraph they're basically fiddling with. It will have their little initials next to it, and you can almost see it as they're typing. You can see things changing in real time. You would like to see something similar with model-driven apps and Canvas apps and so on.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that would be really awesome. I think right now in Power Pages, there's that synchronize button. So if you're building a front-end change and then you go into the, what do they call it? The management app, the portal management app, you can go and make the changes over there, and then you can click on synchronize and it will basically refresh your front end and it will show you what changes were made. But if, as far as I know, it's last in wins. So there's no concurrency, there's no two people working at the same time. Whoever presses the save button last actually overrides the changes and puts them in there. Yeah, that's definitely something that could see some improvement in that space. Any other announcement? Go ahead, Leon.
I just don't get it. I don't get, and I'm not a hardcore dev, right? So maybe that's the problem. But I've spoken to the odd dev about this co-development thing. And it seems to be a solution to a question that no one's asking. I just don't get it, right? So Word documents I get, right? Because I do that a lot, right? We'll be doing a response to a tender. Okay, well, I'll do this section, you do that section, tap, 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 no worries. Excel spreadsheet, we've got 1,000 responses to do because it's an RFP. And so, okay, I'll start at the top, you work at the bottom, we'll walk away. And I get that. Development is a sort of a solo pursuit that you do with others. And so I don't get why you would be in the same. I don't get it. But like, as I say, I'm no dev. Maybe the only place where I can see value is in coaching. So you've got a little newbie dev, and you've got the senior dev who wants to sort of just sit on the top and do other stuff while newbie dev's typing away, and so they're looking over the shoulder, or you're rubber ducking or something like that, where their person has to explain it. But writing at the same, so I'll get off the soapbox now. But writing at the same time, I don't understand it.
Hey, Leon, we've got 20 columns to add to the contact table. You take those 10 and work there, and I'll do the other 10 and work that way.
Yeah, that's I agree with that.
It's never happened on any team ever.
Because this too is kind of we always say like a low code, no code, and citizen dev, and we can easily create the tags not to overlap each other. Yes. But now it's like if two person work on the same form, and that's not really the right way to work.
Yeah. I must say it does happen where you make your changes and you disappear. The impact is not massive because you're like, oh, where are my changes? And then you go and do them again. But definitely, like as Lynn was saying, the first step of hang on, there's someone else in here is a very good way forwards. And then you can go and ping them and say, butt off and let me do my work, and or I'll wait until you're done, or ping me when you're done, something like that. So definitely this is a good step towards the right thing. And especially with Canvas, I think Canvas is where it can get quite ugly, because the whatever solutions they had in the past was very low code or pro code, actually, in terms of you get a diff between the two XMLs. You go and see what was changing this one, what was changing that one. You can do a merge between those two. So that was quite intense. If they can simplify that, then that would be really good. Talking about Canvas apps, so now they've got that REST API to Canvas app conversion as generally available. So this is where you've got an API that is available out there that has some verbs, like, for example, create a customer, delete a customer, update a customer, and whatnot. You can just point to it, and then you can say, all right, based on whatever you can find out in there and all the metadata that it accepts, create an app that will do exactly the same. And that will be a starting point for your work. And I've tried it in the past, and it does work. I think the GA and the things that I've worked on was mainly having a Power Automate custom connector that will allow you to expose those capabilities, and then you would connect to your Power Automate and say, or your custom connection, and you would say, based on that, create an application for me, and it does all the scaffolding, all the pages for you, and so on. Is that something that you guys see will be used in the future by your customers or by your developers building for your customers? No?
Definitely not for me.
That's actually really interesting, because it's the opposite for me, especially in the public sector, because most of the organizations that I work with already have existing data sets. And a good example is like, AK working for MB, me working for DIA. They are the custodians of, public treasures, basically, of those data sets. and they already have services that expose what you can and cannot do with those services. And all we do is create a custom connector to those and say, all right, well, build me an application that allows me to interact with that data and then embed it within a different context of what we're trying to achieve. I think I was talking to Michael Bailey's, who's one of our local Microsoft representatives, and he said, what would be really good is rather than start from scratch, as in, I'm on the command line and I say, this is my connector, create me an app from scratch. The experience would be much better if you're actually in your application, already built half of it and go, I want a connector to this environment. You drag and drop it, and it creates a page for you. I think this becomes quite a useful scenario. So yeah, I definitely want to see more of that, but maybe work a little bit on the experience of how it gets embedded within your applications. Cool. So just conscious of time, we'll probably have about 5 more minutes. There's a few topics that I've got on my list in here that I wanted to cover as well. One of them is the format by example. Eliza, I'm going to hand over the mic to you. Is that something that you're excited about?
Yes and no. First of all, I was expecting to see Stephen do a look, no hands. So I was like, oh, desktop flows, you're like the old kid now. Hello, format data by example, you're the new kid. So from what I could see, and I know I had a separate side discussion with Lynn on this, like it's good in the sense where I have a feeling like it will translate string values, but I don't think it will support arrays just yet. And I couldn't find any documentation around that, so that's what I'm assuming, but maybe that they are working on it. On one hand, I'm going to play devil's advocate here. I do see it as a way for people to get on board with cloud flows, just because knowing how to use functions and expressions, so for those of you who in the call who don't know what functions are, it's basically what you want to do in terms of manipulating a value into a particular output. So let's say you want to format a date that's in UTC that you've retrieved from an API service of some other platform, and now you want to format it to, let's say, date and month. That's what functions will help you do with expressions in Power Automate. So on one hand, if you don't know how to do that, then this is perfect for you. But then at the same time, I also do feel it's kind of being spoon-fed, like you're not actively learning it yourself in terms of understanding, which function to apply to the expression. So I don't know, I feel conflicted, basically. Like, I do like it, but at the same time, I'm like, oh, is this going to prohibit people's learning in terms of actively learning how to use the platform rather than,
So I've played with it recently, right? But I 100% agree, right? So you got to know the function so you can debug it, all right? And so certainly when it first came out, you could sort of do a format and it would sort of create something for you. And yeah, it was normally okay, but occasionally there would be an error in there. It wouldn't be 100%. Yeah. And so if you don't know the function, you can't debug it. So I agree. I think declarative design of the Power Automate flow, where what Rami showed before, where you say I want to do this kind of flow, that makes sense to me. But you still got to know what the components are, so you can make sure it's doing what you can't just say, okay, yep, now give that to production and let's run our entire business off of it. I think that's a very dangerous path to go down. So this idea of, you just give some examples and away we go, rock and roll. This is how we're going to do salaries. Here's some examples of salary payments. You work out the formula, rock and roll. I think it's a really not best practice, shall we say? Yeah. I mean, definitely it gives you a starting point, let's say, just so that it can help you. And I completely agree that for a newcomer trying to, who's most of them would usually feel really overwhelmed with all the things that you can do and would not know where to go and look for documentation. And one thing that I find personally, if it's an area that I'm not really familiar with, I'll go on the internet and go and look for some resources that would help me out. And some of it would be like, 10 years old, 5 years old, and not relevant anymore.
And I'm like, where is that button? I can't see it anywhere. And that's because from, month to month, from release to release, things change drastically. But having that assistance come to you comes in handy, and it supports with, uptake of the platform. Once you are in a position where you're comfortable with it, then definitely you won't need it. And, maybe people like us on the call will probably not be using that. One of the examples that I gave, so, some of you might know that now I live rural. And in order to go to town, I take a train that takes me 45 minutes to get to town. And I love it because I can do some work. And most of the time, given that it's out in the WOPs, I would not have an internet connection. And I realized that actually I write my plugins during that time, and I don't need an internet connection because I know how to do it. I just need to type it in and do the work. So in a way, although Power Automate is all cloud and so on, we will still need the internet connection. But for people that are seasoned, they won't be using that functionality as much. AK, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, so looking at that, and another thing that I found out is one of the stats they say in 2025, 70% of new application will be on the local no-code platforms. And in the call, we have like 13 people. And if it is a 70%, we will need 9 more people. How are we going to make this 9 more people?
Yeah, exactly.
And she got a baby, so we can take her away.
Exactly. And this is something that I've been talking a lot to Microsoft about. So I think, Leon, you made the point earlier, or was it you, Neil, that it's expensive. That's why the product is shit, right? And it's actually no. It's it has nothing to do with the licensing.
Sounds like something I would say.
Yeah, add on top of that the lack of resources to deliver it. And whoever is an expert in that platform charges an arm and a leg to do the work for you, meaning that the platform will equate to it's super expensive, not just for licensing, but also to implement it. Not because it takes a long time, it's just because there's no one to build it. And the numbers that I see on like 75% of applications in the future are going to be, low code, no code. Who's there to deliver that? We need to be recruiting people. We need to be training people to get into that area and then to support Microsoft. In a way, it's like Microsoft, suffering from its own success. Everybody wants low code, everybody wants no code, but there's not enough uptake to actually cater for that. Jiva, you've got your hand up.
Yes, just to add a few things on the, you can hear me, right?
Yeah.
Just to add a few things on that flow. So there are this minor tweaks which really saves lots of our time. Just want to add some of them. I know we're running out of time. So one thing is the owner change. So previously, when if someone has unfortunately added themselves as a owner and then created flows and then they leave the organization, how painful it is to basically migrate those ownerships, right? And now with the flow editor itself, you actually have a provision to go and change the owner to your service account who would like to change. And that's one thing. And second thing is, as the flow run in the results, in the outputs, you can basically add more columns right there. So you don't need to, when you have tons of runs and you want to debug which one, you want to be specific, you can just add all those columns right there. And you're like all this names, whatever you want. And then it helps you to just specific point out the right transaction you want to open and then trigger again, or whatever it is. And the last thing is the power effects field that's added to Dataverse. That's for me, it's a big thing in compared to calculator fields.
Yeah, power effects is sort of making its way through the entire platform, and I really love that capability. In fact, I've been sort of working with the product team closely just to give them feedback on things to improve and so on. And definitely they're heading towards the right direction. We are out of time. There's just a couple of things I wanted to mention. So this is the new microcard that they've also announced. So I'm working with a company in Spain on a challenge that started, I think, about a month ago, where they just got a few people to go and build an application, and then they judge them, and then they go and sort of give them feedback, and then at the end, someone is going to win. And the application that they're building is just a request for a leave request application. And they can choose whatever they want, Dataverse, SharePoint, Canvas, model-driven, whatever they want. And there's that one guy who probably has 1 or 2 experience as a citizen developer, not a developer, not a pro-code developer, and relatively young, so just a couple of years in the industry. And he used those cards as in, just to address the concern that if someone goes into a model-driven app, they'd be like, oh, wow, so many buttons, so many things you can do. It's basically a one-pager that goes into Teams and gives you all the controls that you need. So think like an embedded Canvas app within a Teams chat or something that shows up, a small card, a few actions that you can do, approve, reject, or request more information. And it has all the power of Canvas app. So you can show and hide sections, you can embed a list, you can do whatever you want. And it's using low code and pro code. I was blown away with that kid doing this implementation and showing us how it works. I'm like, I know people that have been in the industry for more than 10 years and they can't build something like you have done. So it's almost like I want to tell him, you're the winner, you can go, but it's not my goal. But yeah, I think there'll be a lot of usage for that one-page card. It's quite a nice, nifty new feature.
Cool.
Neil, tell me about your blooper.
Oh, no, really quickly. So I only joined one live session at Ignite last week, and it was Charles Lamanna's kind of Ask Me Anything with Karunya, and they were looking for questions from the audience, so I thought I better look some stuff up. So I went to Bing and I searched for Ignite Book of News, and I was like, that's not news. Hey, that's my question. Hey, Charles, what do you call this? You're announcing it was Power Apps pay-as-you-go licensing is generally available. Like, that was in a blog post in March, you idiot. But of course, Charles knew something that I didn't know, which was that the top Bing search result for Ignite Book of News is 2021 Book of News. It's only now that it's with the passage of time and indexing and stuff that if you do a Bing search for Ignite Book of News, that the 2022 Book of News comes up to the top. So be careful when you ask Charles and try to call him out that you're looking at the most recent stuff. Thankfully, they didn't pick up my question or try to answer it. I would have felt even embarrassed.
Neil said.
That's right.
Yeah, definitely. And I had the same mistake. So I was searching for the actual URL, which I pasted in the chat, and I looked at Ignite Book of News. And in fact, I got the 2021, and I was like, that doesn't look right. I was just going through it. It wasn't formatted correctly and all of that because I've seen the new one. I was like, there's something wrong. And then luckily I noticed that it's 2020. It definitely follow the URL in there, and then you'll be able to see it. So yeah, the Book of News probably summarizes some of the things that we talked about. What I really like about it is that it has the link to additional information, so the official blog posts where they've announced all of that. And from the blog post, they've got links to the Microsoft Learn and some additional resources in there to get your hands dirty and so on. So yeah, I mean, we're way out of time. I know you guys have better things to do. We have a long weekend coming up in New Zealand. For those of you that are going through a long weekend, enjoy the long weekend. For the Australians, sorry, enjoy your normal weekend. But thank you everybody for attending. There's been a pleasure talking to you guys and seeing your faces as well.
You too, Rami.
It's been a really nice conversation. And yeah, I guess onwards and upwards, always new, cool, exciting stuff to geek out about. Thank you very much, guys.
See you at the New Zealand Business Application Summit.
Yeah. See you on the 4th of November. See you guys. Cheers. Bye.
Bye.